So, for the first month in Cebu, the Philippines, for me was all about lessons learned, the realization of those, and processing them, basically just getting my shit together and figuring things out. It was in the second month, however, that I began to get clarity of mind and sharpen my focus. I knew my way around the place and things were getting familiar. I thought nothing of hopping onto the back of a motorbike taxi and zooming around the city, weaving in and out of traffic, the gauntlet in trying to cross Salinas Drive before you take the first turning on the left to Gonzon Street into IT Park. I had a routine that accounted for most hours of the day, and I was really starting to enjoy the experience. Although I didn't really know my overall direction, I had already made the decision that if I wanted to, I could certainly start a life here, but I promised myself that I would give both the Philippines and Thailand an equal shot. I didn't want to have emotional ties of any kind, especially in the form of a relationship, because then there's a tendency for one to stay put. It's all too easy to then start procrastinating from that point onwards. You've got a girl, you settled in your condo together, you've got a routine together, and you're just living life. Thailand couldn't wait and everything else can wait also. So I decided that I was not going to get into a relationship to avoid this from happening. And I wasn't going to stay too long and become too settled in the Philippines either. I remember most afternoons around 2 or 3 p.m. I would go to the 26th floor of my condo residence, which is the viewing deck. And at least half of the time it was just me on my own. I'd sit there and admire the city buildings all around me, combined with the roar of the traffic that was reduced to a gentle hum at this height. I'd watch the planes coming across the skyline, landing in Mactan Airport, and conjecturing about who was starting a new life in Asia like I did. I then turned my focus to scripting for YouTube for an hour or two before my late afternoon swim, after which my attention would turn to making the trek to IT Park for dinner or ordering from the Grabak. The condo residence I was in didn't have a gym. It was one of the more recently developed residences, and they hadn't got around to putting a gym in yet. Initially, I'd extended my love of swimming for both morning and late afternoon. But when you get up at 7 a.m. and you've got to start putting suntan lotion on, a swimming hat, earplugs, and a swimming top to minimize the impact of the strength of the morning sun, even at 7:38 a.m., it's actually quite unpleasant to swim. In my frustration, I decided to give the morning swim up in exchange for jogging in front of the bathroom mirror for half an hour. And I mean proper jogging on the spot, as if you had a Wii console. For the first week, I did 10 minutes running, 5 rest, 10 minutes running, 5 rest, and 10 minutes running. For the second week, I did 15 minutes running, 5 rest, and 15 minutes running. And then by the end of the first month, I did the whole 30 minutes straight off the bat. I closed the balcony door, turned the aircon off, and ran my ass off for half an hour. And by the end of it, I can tell you, I was dripping with sweat. Now, as I ran, I'd listen to motivational stuff on YouTube, and my mantra was, just keep going. That's it, just keep going. I was so determined to see the whole journey through and do it properly. There was no way in this world that I was going to let a girl or anything else interfere with my plans. I remember watching the most spectacular firework display in Cebu on New Year's Eve. It was like a war zone with amazing atmosphere. I started 2025 with a positive mindset, much more open to opportunities and a great appreciation for the journey that I was on. It was just after the end of the first week of January when I got sideswiped by an anomaly I wasn't expecting. That's when everything started to change. You see, about 3 or 4 years prior to arriving in the Philippines, I had my first LDR with a Filipina that lasted only a few months. However, one of her friends I stayed in touch with, well, we ended up having an LDR for just over a year. Now, I ended it for a variety of reasons, the main one being this person had a character flaw for dishonesty and not setting appropriate boundaries. However, even though our only communication following the next couple of years was through email, she never forgot my birthdays or Christmases. So when I finally ended up in Cebu and she contacted me to say hi, she was obviously surprised to learn I'd already been in the Philippines for several weeks. Shortly after, she let me know that she would be visiting Cebu for just a couple of nights for something completely unrelated. At this point, I had no real inclination to see this person. But when I got a message early one morning saying that she was at Cebu Pier 1, I decided to be decent enough to offer to say hello and invite her to the lobby for a quick chat. It was strange seeing her after knowing each other virtually for almost 4 years. She was very slim and petite, around 4'9", mid-20s, and slightly prettier in person. I greeted her in the lobby and was moving through to a more comfortable area to sit when the guard on reception motioned that she had to sign in as a visitor. Okay, fair enough. But for some reason, we then walked straight into the elevator and then up to my condo. Now, I have to be honest and say that when I walked behind her into the elevator, my mind told me loud and clear, yeah, I'll have some of that. Now, we knew each other very well, and there was no awkwardness. In fact, we felt very comfortable and at ease with each other from the very beginning. Needless to say that things then moved very quickly, and a couple of days later, she was extending her stay with me in my place, followed by a trip onto an island not more than a couple of hours from Cebu. This stage, it was more of a case of, let's just make the best of our time together. But as the days passed, it was clear that she didn't want to return to the province, and if I'm being honest, I didn't want her to either. Within a day or two, she'd found a job as an English teacher in Cebu for a few weeks, and from that point onwards, life rolled on quite nicely. We had a great time running around the city, going for dinner every night, shopping together, and everything else that a couple would do. The fact that we were already so familiar with each other made things so much easier. Until you've had a petite Filipina looking straight into the eyes and telling you, do what you want with me. You don't ask for it, just take it whenever you want. You haven't lived. When you hear those words, something changes on the inside. It's like your thirst is quenched in a way that it's never been before. The mind also has a tendency to run away with itself, and I was waiting for the return of my ACR card from the Bureau of Immigration, which would have enabled me to do this. So the option was there. However, there was a more important issue at hand that I was struggling to get my head around. And it's an issue that most expats over a certain age are also going to have to confront head on if they find themselves in a similar situation. And that is commitment. And I mean in the form of marriage and kids. When you're with a girl of practically any nationality and she's pushing into her mid-20s, it's par for the course. Even if in their early 20s, they are adamant that they do not want kids. By the time those hormones start raging, around 27, 28, there is nothing in the world that they can do to stop this. Combine that with the fact that in Asia, most girls are considered to be on the shelf at 30, and you have both biological and psychological pressures that made this virtually unavoidable. Now, if you're an expat over 50 and you've already done the family thing, there's very little impetus to go through it all again. And that's because you know exactly what it involves. Once you've had a little human being in your life or two, it really is for life. The responsibility is always there. But then there's the financial elements as well. Now, I've seen many examples of guys in their later years pushing a stroller with a toddler in it, and some genuinely seemed happy, whilst others almost had a look of regret on their face. At the end of the day, it's down to the individual circumstances. I went back and forth in my mind with the issue of the ramifications of it all. In all honesty, the marriage thing didn't really appeal to me. I've been alive long enough to know what 20 years with somebody feels like, and that's somebody that's easy to live with. So God only knows what it would have been like with somebody that's not. Then we start factoring the longevity and familiarity that eats away at the best of couples. Now look at the possibility of a recession, financial issues, and other problems that can come from any aspect of life out of nowhere. It's always the things that you haven't thought about that can catch you off guard. People are fickle and they change in life. Statistically, in the West, you've got no more than a flip of the coin probability in succeeding at a marriage. At the end of the day, a marriage is just a piece of paper that carries with it no guarantees. This may sound cynical, but marriage is generally, in my view, for the young, the naive, and the needy. When you're in your 20s and you're walking down the aisle with somebody, the last thing you're thinking about is divorce lawyers, the dividing of assets, and visitation rights to see the kids. It's two swans together forever, surfing the crest of an emotional tsunami of yumminess. Who sets up in business focused on bankruptcy? You're seeing franchises around the globe. In the risk-reward equation, we focus purely on the reward, but the risk is always there, and it's very, very real. So, her and I are coming from very different angles on this. It's at this point when I come to my senses, being the older, wiser person, and a moment of clarity shows a vision of reality that cannot be ignored. All of a sudden, the whirlwind of intoxicating emotions take a serious turn. No matter what your age or circumstances, if you're dating a younger girl or even an older one, at some point, sooner or later, this is a hurdle you are likely to face. But it goes deeper than this, because then you start to question the fact that if you're in a relationship with a younger girl and you're both very happy, and suddenly this starts to rear its head, this could potentially be a deal breaker and the ride comes to a stop, and that's when people get hurt. It's probably the most important decision that needs to be early on in the initial stages of a relationship. Anyway, because of this, I went back and forth in my mind, projecting into the future all the possibilities, and I ended up asking myself just this one question. If I'm now pushing 52, if I had a kid in the next year, add another 9 months on top of that, I'm close to 54. Do I want a 10-year-old running into my bedroom on a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. when I'm 64, jumping up and down on the bed shouting, "Come on, Dad, you've got to take them to soccer practice"? It took me literally seconds for my mind to scream the answer at me in no uncertain terms, and that was, no, I do not. You see, whilst I may not see a major problem with it now while I've got more energy, I have to think in terms of a decade down the line, and then all the years that follow on from that into my 70s and potentially 80s. When I'm 64, as the song goes, I'm probably going to want to slowly awaken to the world, then shuffle across to make a cup of tea or coffee while I sit there and ponder my itinerary for the day, which in reality might not be much. Maybe I'll go down to the shops and take my time in getting lunch. Then in the afternoon, I'll go down to the allotments and do some gardening. Maybe I'm over-exaggerating here, but you get the point. I'm certainly not saying it's unworkable. What I am saying is it's ideally impractical. Anyway, going back to my situation. Her teaching contract was up at the end of the month and she wanted to go back to see family in province. Fair enough. I'll take that as my cue, an opportunity then to pop across to Thailand, where I get 60 days on arrival, which should be long enough for me to get a really good feel for the place and make any decisions. This is exactly what happened. We went for dinner in IT Park, said our goodbyes with the fullest intention of meeting up on either in Thailand or back in Cebu at a later date. I caught the 2:30 a.m. direct flight to Bangkok, followed by a taxi straight down to Jomtien, Pattaya. It didn't take me more than a few days to realize that there was a big green tick here, all the things that I was looking for relocating. The affordability of the setting itself, and then the amenities within that setting. During the first 3 weeks, I went back and forth with all my options and came to the conclusion that I'm not here to fulfill somebody else's fantasies and dreams in terms of marriage and kids. In the past, there have been occasions where this person had put themselves first, and I was going to do exactly the same here. Just before the end of the first month, I walked into a retirement visa agent, slammed my passport down on the table, and told him to get on with it. It was done before the end of the day. The following day, as luck would have it, I located the perfect condo in the right area that I wanted with the right view at the right price. I secured it with a down payment, and just like that, everything was done. Time flies, and this is my 4th month in Thailand. I'm not going to say the place is amazing. After all, it's just a place at the end of the day, but it will do absolutely fine for me for now. I have at least another year on my visa, and other than the TN 90-day reporting, which is mandatory, I don't have to go anywhere near immigration. I'm a fully fledged member of the Thai club. I can honestly say, in all the time in my life that I've been on my own, excluding family life, I can honestly say that this is the most content, I almost want to say happy, that I've ever been. Even to the point where I've muttered the words to myself, how did life get this good? For the equivalent of around $1,300 or so, I can comfortably cover my accommodation expenses. The amenities, all utilities, food and drink I eat out every night, the occasional night out with the lads, even a spot of entertainment on occasions if I felt like it. Make it 1,600 and now you're having a really good time and enjoying yourself. And if you can crack the 2K mark, you're living like an emperor over here. Although nothing beats the privilege of experiencing family life, this is a damn good second. The key is you have to make it what you want. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. You have to focus on what you truly want and then relentlessly set about achieving that until it's your reality. Going back a year, there was a fork in the road for me. I rolled the dice, took the path into the unknown, and here I am. This is essentially what this channel is all about. It doesn't matter whether it's Asia or anywhere else in the world. Right now, the key pull in Asia is the affordability. But when you cross-reference that with the way the West is going, it's an arrow pointing downwards. It's no wonder then why millions of men around the world are looking for better options right now. Yes, you will have ups and downs. You're going to have an open mind. There will be things that irritate you and frustrate you. But overall, don't ever forget why you are looking for other options in the first place. If things were that great where you are now, you wouldn't even be thinking about it. It might take some time to get used to things and find your footing, to build a social circle or find a girlfriend. It's not how things are in the first few months. It's how things are in the first few years. I'm looking to compare year on year for the first 3 to 5 years. And I have a little feeling, an inkling inside of me, that when I get to that point, I'll look back and thank myself wholeheartedly for getting on that plane to the other side of the world. What I've learned so far is this. It's not necessarily your destination. It's who you become on the journey along the way. You're never too old to make massive changes in your life. I've met guys of all ages, mainly those over 50, 60, 70s, even one in his 80s. But we all had one thing in common. We just fucking did it.